We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. This is the August 21st Park and Recreation Committee meeting. We'll do a roll call as we do before each meeting. So if you could state your name and.
Hi, Kyle.
Amanda Cahill.
Okay.
Dawn Wittenberg.
I'm Larry Schultz.
Mary Larson.
Jeanette June.
And Melissa Swanson with the City of Victoria, Assistant City Manager.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda is petitions, proclamations, suggestions, or complaints from citizens, committee members, or staff. And this is an item where if we've heard things in the community or we want to bring up our own issues or have questions, this is a good opportunity to do that. I know Amanda's your second meeting, maybe? First or second?
Yeah. Well, this might be my third now, but I think I just came and watched one too.
Okay,
Yeah.
and also your first one as well, I believe, or
Second.
Second one. Okay, all right. So you're old pros at this. I missed the last one on vacation. So anyway, I know a couple of you have mentioned to me, and I also had this. I think it would be a good opportunity for Alyssa to give us an update on stuff that's happening at the city, but also we've had goals as a committee, and it would be good maybe to get a brief update of where we are with goals. And I had called Alyssa earlier in the day to forewarn her a little bit on that topic, so we can stay current and make sure, as we're responsible to the city council, that we are doing our part to keep things rolling here. So with that, Alyssa, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee members. And I really do appreciate the phone call, and I know the emails that have come through, making sure that I'm well prepared for this meeting and I'm providing you the best information that you need as a committee to make the best decisions. So with that, I'm going to kick us off and talk about something that I sent an email over a while ago, and then we'll get into the work plan, and if you don't mind, Chair. So what I have on the screen is the Parks and Recreation survey, and I also have a flyer sitting at your spot on the dais. And I just want to call this out to each one of you, as well as anyone that's watching at home or on the cable access channel or from your phone or wherever. But as part of the transition and just looking at our park system, something that we like to do as staff is do a good pulse check on the community and seeing, where are we when it comes to the satisfaction of our parks and trail system. And when we look at amenities, are we providing the amenities that the city is looking for? Are we putting the programs in our recreation brochure that the city is looking for? Are we putting the playground structures or the right courts and fields into our parks? So this is really going to help us as staff, as well as a committee, as well as a council, really make the best decision moving forward. So what the plan is we're going to keep this open for quite some time. And then what we'll do is we'll review this as a committee moving forward, what the responses were, just to give us a good idea of what the community is thinking about when it comes to our park system, as well as the recreation center. At the end, if you've taken the survey already, you've probably seen that the recreation center is also on there, just to make sure that we're aligning with what the community's wants and needs are.
That's real good, by the way. I actually filled out mine yesterday, and I think there's some good information that if we get good participation, we can glean some good things from the community that will help inform us in our recommendations going forward.
Wonderful.
And I also heard that we had maybe a couple volunteers to help disseminate the survey or speak about it at
Yeah.
our auto show.
That's the other thing, as we're looking at marketing this and really pushing it out. It's one thing to have it be a digital survey, that we have this beautiful flyer with the QR code, but really, how are we getting it out to the community? And one of the things we've been looking at is connecting the digital world with the physical world. So you've probably seen in our park system, we have signs. If you're out in our parks, take our survey, come on, let us know what your feedback is. But the other thing that we've asked the committee, as well as our senior advisory committee, as well as our volunteers, is to maybe host like some sort of pop-up booth or event, or host a booth at an event that says, here's the information, please take this, we're looking for everyone's feedback. So I know we've had some volunteers that have already signed up to help with the car show, and we're gonna host a booth there, weather dependent. I heard that the heat index might be really hot, so we'll talk after the fact on what that looks like. But if you are interested, whether it's, you have a Saturday morning off and you want to grab a stack of flyers and sit out by Bayfront Park and just hand them to the bikers and the walkers that go by, that would be amazing. Or if you want to help out and host an actual booth at an upcoming event like the fire station open house, we're open to any ideas and any opportunities. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me about something like that. Thank you.
When were you hoping to close the survey, just as an FYI?
In a couple weeks or so. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but thank you for that question.
I have a question as well too. I took it in anticipation that we might be talking about it. Do you have any opportunity to make edits or updates, or since it's already live, are you not allowed to make changes?
Since it's live, we'd like to keep it exactly what it is, so we're getting a good pulse from the people that first took it, from the people that are going to respond to it the day before we close. So at this time, we probably aren't going to make any changes. However, committee member, we would love to hear your feedback, so please feel free to either share with the group now, or you can just send me a note. I'd be happy to talk with you afterwards as well.
Okay, yeah, I'll probably send you some information just because I noticed some things that are like kind of technical, like when it asked for rankings in some cases, it asked for a 1, 2, 3 ranking, and I was able to select way more than that. So you might get then, as we know, if the system allows it, people are gonna, not on purpose, but sometimes do those things. So I'll send you some info later.
Perfect, much appreciated.
Amanda, I would like to know your feedback on the survey, because I've taken it too, and I found it a little difficult to get through some of the rankings. It took me a while to.
So I did, one of my pieces of feedback is it said 7 minutes plus. Yeah. And I was like, oh, sure. I think it probably took me 25 minutes.
Oh,
right.
No kidding.
If not longer, because my family was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm doing my committee work. So I would just, that would have been one of my feedback, was maybe warn people. I don't know if you can change that language to how long it would take. I did it on my phone. I don't know if you.
I did it on my iPad.
Okay.
I did that on my phone.
Okay.
Did it take you that long also?
Yeah,
20
yes,
minutes.
Absolutely.
It took longer than 7 minutes. I don't know how long, because I was kind of interrupted as I was doing it. But it took longer than 7 minutes for sure, especially if you wanted to make comments.
Yeah, I was trying to be thoughtful about my
Yeah.
comments too.
Yeah. And then, like I said, I'll have to go back and look at it on the desktop, because I didn't do it at the time, screenshotting the ones that allowed me to select more than was there. And then, like you guys said, for maybe some of those fill in the blanks, I felt I had to select other because an option wasn't there. So that I felt really was pertinent to Park and Rec and our committee. And one of those things that I felt wasn't there in some of the cases was the trail gaps. So people could technically select other things, not realizing that that was also responsibility of Park and Rec and Trail Committee. You know what I mean? They'd have to specifically fill that in. So I will send the specific question numbers and stuff that pertain to, but.
Okay, good feedback. Yes, Alyssa.
I just want to note, Chair, thank you. I am taking notes, so thank you all for your feedback. And if you do hear anything else, we'd love to hear it. And I do believe we can change some things as like some of those minor questions and making sure that the rankings are actually showing correctly, so we can make those changes, hopefully on the back end. The thing on length, I think that's automated through the survey software we use, but I'm gonna check on that too. We wanna be portraying the actual time length, because some people might be just doing it quickly on their phone and think that they only need 10 minutes, when in all reality, for a real thoughtful response, they might need more. So thank you all for that. I appreciate it.
And
Go ahead.
and I was going to ask, I would have liked to have had some input on the survey design to begin with, or at least the questions that were asked or how they were ranked. It just came out and I went, would have loved to have had the opportunity to preview it first and then make those suggestions then. So I'm sorry that we didn't get to. I know with the transition, it's been difficult, but yeah, I would have liked to have seen it before it actually came out, so we could have had some input into it.
And I think this group has been real thoughtful in my experience in coming up with good suggestions on those things. So I agree in the future, it would be helpful to run those things by. And again, transitions are difficult, and I think Ann began the process. And so, it's out there now, so we'll do what best we can, but I think in the future it'd be good to get that input, because we might have been able to catch some of
Just
it.
as a review, like, even if we could make changes, like a double check, because like when you read those things, I know if you're drafting a communication or email or anything and you've read it so many times, sometimes your brain just doesn't even catch a word that's off or whatnot, and not anyone's error.
Yeah. Okay, points well taken, and we do appreciate that, there's interest in a survey, and the survey's out there, but just a couple things that can help us in the future going forward, so.
And then I just want to talk about the car, about the pop-up thing that Mary and I have volunteered to do the car show, but we are, so, my idea was that I would probably do an hour, would probably be the most that I would want to do, and I don't know if other members would like to participate, be there another time, or if we could work out something like that.
Is that tomorrow,
Wednesday.
Wednesday night?
It's also going to be 98 degrees, so
Yeah.
is there a discussion about maybe even canceling the car show?
Yes. So we can talk. I'll probably know more information tomorrow, specifically about if they're going to host a car show or not.
Okay.
That would be the VBOA that makes that call. So we've been working with them on what that looks like.
If the car show does go on to the point of we don't need somebody sitting there one person sitting there all night, or two people spending all night there, anybody else willing to volunteer?
I'd help in that.
I would as well if you need help. So Alyssa, we'll just let you divvy up the times or
Sounds wonderful.
coordinate that if the show goes on, so to speak.
And is this the last car show of the summer?
Yeah.
It is, okay.
And it's gonna seem like summer this year. Sounds like.
Well, Alyssa, depending on when the fire department open house is, I'd be happy to help. Sounds like we have enough volunteers to cover Wednesday night, but certainly happy to help that event.
When is the fire department open house?
Sometime in mid-September. The exact date I don't have that at the top of my head,
Okay.
but I can get that together. Hopefully it will be cooler.
Yes. Yeah, that would be a good time to do that.
Yep. You had also said, asking for feedback from the community. I've been, two suggestions that I've heard from neighbors is, one, is that it would be nice to have porta potty facilities at parks that don't have restrooms. So specifically, we live in the Deer Run neighborhood, and there's that, Tot Park that, if little kids come to play, they would often probably appreciate having a bathroom. So I don't know if porta potties are something that have been considered, but that'd be a nice amenity for the neighborhood. And then the other suggestion that came up, and this may open up a can of worms, but a neighbor had suggested that she has seen that tennis courts in other communities will have painting in a different color to mark off the parameters of a pickleball court. Have you seen that? So that's, again, 2 suggestions. And whether it be like full paintings or just, hashtags to indicate where that line would be, it would create a multi-use function for that.
I think those would be 2 really good things to put on our list when we consider projects through the coming year, to consider as we rank all the items. Because
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Dawn, I was gonna give you, I think it was in the Deer Run neighborhood. There is one little tennis court there, and one of the neighbors asked the city about painting the lines so they could be a multi-use, and the rest of the neighbors were in an uproar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For the noise.
Yeah. So when I talked to him about it, I think the city is willing to do it.
Yeah.
It's just that the neighborhood has got to be
Yeah.
all on
Well,
board.
I know that there was some discussion earlier on about a pickleball court in that location, and that did not go over well. So,
Yeah.
and I think, the neighbors that I saw, I think had put tape down, and so they were making it work for them, and that's a fun solution.
Which would be great, yeah.
Okay, so we can probably axe that then, for now.
okay, well, or at least put it on the, discussion for the future, but good points, because I know when we decided on, or recommended the current site where the 8 courts went, one of the biggest considerations was the noise. And that eliminated a number of parks and kind of narrowed our focus a little bit, which was probably helpful. And we were fortunate to have 8 really nice courts that opened up last week, or a couple weeks ago, I guess.
One more comment. People love having the skateboard park in the new facility in Lions Park. Great location, great visibility. We see it being used every time we go past.
Wonderful. Okay, did you have an update on our other goals?
Yes,
Okay,
Chair, committee members. So for those who've been here for quite a while, the work plan is something probably very familiar to all of you. But if you haven't been here for a long time, the City Council adopts a work plan for each of the committees, which are created by the committees, items that should be reviewed and talked about, and items that should be moved forward throughout the year as a committee. So in the Parks and Recreation Department work plan for this year, there was 27 different initiatives that covered parks, trails, recreation center improvement, staffing, and recreation program development. And so I just wanted to give a brief highlight on some of those initiatives and where we stand today. So some of those parks and trail related items, obviously you see on our screen are beautiful new pickleball courts, and they really are beautiful. We've gotten so many compliments on the color combos and just how they function and how they look. So this is probably one of our best amenities in our park system. But some other things that we've accomplished and are working on this year is Bavaria Trail as well as Green Crush Trail. Those are both well under construction and are getting close to nearing the finish line on both of those. So you'll see those come in to be fully opened relatively soon. We also have Lakeside Estates Parks Phase 2. This park was split into 2 phases through development and with funding needs. So we worked on the first part of the park, putting a playground in, a basketball court, getting a park shelter in the space, and then we had this whole big green area that was a question on what we'd move forward with. So as a committee, there was a lot of decisions being had on what should be put in there, and we are nearing the finish line on that park as well. So it has a new softball baseball field, as well as a beautiful trail system that loops around the park and a parking lot that's included in that Phase 2 project. So we're nearing the ending of that park. The piece that we're waiting for, and this is the same with the pickleball courts too, is really the vegetation growth. Something we're struggling with the drought-like conditions is when you seed the grass, it's just not holding in. So you're seeing a lot of weeds that come in. There's not anything that's actually staying in the ground. There's even some dead trees just because of the heat. and just the lack of water that's been going on. So we're working with the contractors, both on the pickleball courts as well as Lakeside Estates Park, to replace some trees and get some new grass seed coming in when it gets cooler closer to fall. So we'll see both of those areas have significant improvements as we get closer to the colder weather. And then the skate park relocation, obviously we just talked about that, but it has opened, completed in August of this year. And I will say this is probably one of the funnest projects that we've done in the Parks and Recreation Department. We partnered with a local skate park pro, more or less, a resident here in town that's an avid skateboarder and has a lot of different connections to really look at this pad and look at the equipment we had. We repurposed the equipment that we had at the prior site at the recreation center to save on cost. So he was able to look at the design and really make the equipment work with the new pad and the new space, and something that actually works for skateboarders, people with scooters, bikes in today's world versus 20 years ago. So that's been a really fun project. He came out on site with us and the Public Works team to lay out the equipment and measure it all out. And he brought his little 4-year-old, so it was a lot of fun. So, yeah. Some other improvements, if you've been out to the recreation center recently, you have noticed that there's a lot of caution tape that's hanging around. One of the items on the work plan was to get the roof project completed. If you've been at the recreation center the last winter, you have noticed that with the continuous freeze-thaw cycle, it has put significant stress on our roof system. We have a flat roof, which works in certain ways, but also doesn't in other ways. And what that freeze cycle does is it breaks the sealant on the roof and causes a lot of leak damage. So there really isn't any temporary fixes to that. What really needed to happen is a roof replacement. And with the school district's partnership, we're able to get that project started earlier this summer. So hopefully that shouldn't take too long, and hopefully that construction tape will go away. And then we've been working on some front desk staff restructuring. So what we've been looking at is really trying to highlight the needs of our recreation center, specifically that front desk position and that front desk space. So part of that is we have purchased new front desk furniture to allow for more than one person to sit in that front desk area. If you've been in there now, the desk is pretty crowded. There's not a lot of elbow room, and if we're training new staff, there isn't any room for a second person to sit and really understand what our system is. So part of this is expanding that space a little bit more to provide up to 3 different people to sit behind that front desk and really assist customers as they come in and out. So we'll have at least 2 people coming in there at some of our peak hours. The other piece to that is Brenda, who's been at the front desk at the Recreation Center for a number of years now. She has been promoted to our guest service lead, who will be our main key point person for our front desk staff, as well as training, really bolstering our training in that position, making sure people feel comfortable. There's a lot of weird situations that can happen at the Recreation Center, so we want to make sure people are really understanding what the position is and are well trained for anything that might come up. So we're really excited to see what that will happen, and the desk furniture will come in hopefully at the end of September or early October. And then the pickleball vending machine was also on the list, and this was kind of an exciting one that as staff we were really hoping to get going. For those who aren't aware, a pickleball vending machine operates similar to a regular vending machine, except for your Doritos and your Gatorade and your water. It's full of pickleball equipment that people can either rent or purchase on site if they're wanting to use our outdoor or indoor pickleball courts. Unfortunately, we were hoping to use grant funding to purchase this. They're actually quite expensive, and there's a company that specializes in pickleball vending machines, but grant funds wouldn't help pay for that machine. So now we're looking at new opportunities or things that we can do moving forward. So it was more of a nice to have feature, but we'll obviously keep looking. Well, that would be my next slide. Any questions from the committee? That is all I had on the work plan update.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other items for the proclamation suggestions? Just one other thing I had was, is there an update on the position for replacing Ann?
Absolutely. So Currently, we have an acting Parks and Recreation Director who you are happen to be looking at. That would be my role. And I think we were talking briefly before the meeting, just in a side note, but what we're really doing with this transition period is taking a real good look at our Parks and Recreation staffing as a whole and really ensuring that we're meeting the needs of our community. We've had 2 full-time Parks and Recreation staff members for the last 15 plus years, and we've grown immensely since then. So we're taking a real good look on what are the needs that we have today and how do we continue them on moving forward. So we don't have an actual answer for you, Chair, to that question, but we are really looking hard at what our needs are and making sure we can fill that.
Okay.
Larry, I do have one thing. I did email you, but just so that everyone probably was wondering or thought about too, that we didn't approve any minutes at this meeting. And so I had asked Alyssa, well, we did have a May meeting and we had a lot of discussion at that meeting. And, you know, are minutes going to be available for May for us to review? And if you want to answer for the group.
Absolutely. I think I even had it on here for a slide. I might have skipped over it though, so I'm glad you brought that up. So yes, you did have a May meeting. Absolutely, there's no skipping over that. But when we were looking through the meeting notes from our agenda software, we didn't have any of those notes available to us. So what we're doing on the staff side is reviewing some of the notes from our videographer, some timestamps as well as the video. We're going to go back and make sure that we properly take minutes for those notes. So it might be a couple-hour meeting of a watch on my part, but we're going through that and we'll have something to you the next month or so. So do not worry, we did not skip over May. You might have to approve 2 meeting minutes next month. So.
Okay. All right. Anything else? If not, we'll move along. Don't believe there's any old business. New business, sidewalk and trail network. And I guess the senior advisory committee, from reading the materials, has an interest in walking trails or whatever. So if you want to take it, Alyssa.
Absolutely, Chair. Thank you. So yes, the Senior Advisory Committee, as part of their 2023 work plan, has taken the opportunity to really review our city parks and trails and our current sidewalk network and really try and identify some walking routes that people could utilize to market and really promote health in our community, as well as if there's ways to connect people from more of those senior areas like our Able Lake community or the Steiger Lake condos to some key amenities in our downtown, as well as other areas in our community. And what that really has turned into is looking at the community as a whole and really connecting people in general to different areas of our community. And again, creating these real key routes that people can park at and then take a couple-mile walk if that's something they're interested in doing. So that is what I'm here to present to you all about. What we'd like to do as a senior advisory committee is obviously have a lot of input into what these routes could be, making sure we're not missing anything, obviously before we get to the next stages of whatever this might turn into. So like I said, this has been on the work plan for 2023, and we've been going through that process for the last couple of months or so. And there's a few different steps we have to take, and I'm just gonna highlight, we're just strictly on the first one. So we're just looking through potential routes via a map as an aerial view, looking at our current sidewalks and trail systems, looking at what our parks are, our parking areas, and just trying to get a good idea with what we have today. What could we do? How could we connect people to certain areas, and what really fits our community without having to place new infrastructure and building or connecting trail gaps, really looking at what we have and making sure people aren't going on roads. So we tried and avoided any areas that were missing sidewalk connections, not going into those areas, just really keenly focusing on areas that have either a trail or a sidewalk connection. So that is what we're currently at. Some of the key pieces that the Senior Advisory Committee wanted us to take a look at is accessible parking, making sure that people can park there because more than residents might want to utilize these trail routes. making sure that they have connections to key features. So obviously Lions Park, Victoria Downtown, the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail if you want to go for a longer hike, Victoria Recreation Center, etc. Looking at potential themes that we can create from these for maybe future programming and development, and even a connection to Victoria's past. Obviously, there's a ton of different individuals that have lived here in their past lives, and we want to make sure that we're promoting our heritage, possibly through utilizing this trail route system. And then looking at creation of trails that could be expanded. How can, if people are looking for a bit more of a challenge, being able to go a little bit farther than what we had proposed. So like I said, we're on step 1, but our next few steps, not to pull the cart before the horse, but just to give you a good overview of what this project really entails, is then evaluating the routes for things like elevation, ease of walking, and amenity features like benches, picnic tables, lighting, shade, park connections as well. And that might anticipate having a park or a walking audit where committee members, you can also be engaged in that as well, taking your walk audit and going through some of these routes and really just seeing how do these feel? How do we rank them? And are we missing things here? And then make recommendations for future amenity placement or fixes or wayfinding designs as well as wayfinding placement. Maybe this is a really good route, but it's missing a few benches. Maybe there's a good spot for people to stop and rest that we aren't considering or we don't have a bench for, so this would be a really good time to do that. And there's a lot of grant funding, as step 4 states, that will assist that once we have some trail routes and a good plan in place. So then it would obviously be working with staff to make sure that we can then fund some of these amenities that we want to add to our trail routes and our park communities. So before I delve into some of the trail routes that have already been proposed by the Senior Advisory Committee, I'm going to stop and ask if there's any questions on just the overview of the background of this project.
Well, I guess my question is, or whatever, because I guess I'm trying to understand the difference between walking routes versus trails, because this committee has already developed a priority of the trails that to be developed in that. So I guess I'm getting confused on the difference between a sidewalk and a trail and why they would be different. That kind of got me confused. But I don't know if the Senior Advisory Committee has seen our list of the trails that we've prioritized to be done already.
If you don't mind me responding,
Yeah,
Chair
yeah.
and committee members, thank you, committee member, for asking that question. The committee member is familiar with the trail gaps, and what this project isn't necessarily saying that the trail gap priority list is wrong. It's just saying we still want to make sure that there's trail routes available for people, even though those trail gaps exist. So they're just taking a look at the current map infrastructure that we have at the 32 miles of trails and sidewalks, both, and just saying how do we connect point A to point B in a fun way that people might be able just to tour our community and also get to fun different destinations. So they're absolutely understanding the trail gaps and what some of our city systems are missing, but how can we still make sure people can utilize our trails efficiently now?
And I guess that we've prioritized kind of, when we would hopefully get them done in that, first. And
Absolutely.
but, everything's dependent on funding.
Yes, it is.
That was our big bugaboo.
I guess I share your concern. I had the same when I initially read it, and then as I saw this, I think I see what's happening here. It seems like this is more programming, where the trail is more the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So, however, I think there's probably an opportunity here to broaden the scope of this, not to create extra work, but to meld together the work of the Senior Advisory Committee and what the Park and Rec Committee has already done. And I would hope that as the Senior Advisory Committee looks at these areas, that they don't exclude areas where there are trail gaps, that if they see, wow, if this trail gap was here, this would make this so much better. And then share that with this group and we can work together, because as we periodically revise our list, and we have, I think we had like 5 priorities. I think one of them's being resolved with the Cochia project, with the 2 developments that are going in. That one's going to be accomplished. And then I think the other one that is East Bavaria that's being completed. So that's, I'm about 1.5 because we had hoped to get the whole thing. So, that's 2 that we could get done or almost get done. And then there's a few other ones that are on our list, but I don't think we should exclude, the work of this group to say, well, we can't go there because there's not a trail gap. That might increase the community support for spending some additional dollars to complete some of those trail gaps. And that's the one thing I hear, and I think Amanda alluded to it earlier when she was talking about making comments about the survey with trail gaps. I repeatedly hear that from people I interact with. That's probably the thing that is brought up most is, boy, I wish we could connect this trail or connect that one, because I think more and more people are using those, and I think they'd like to have their children use some of those too. But if there's a gap there, they're not too excited about going on the main road to get to another place. So if we can kind of coordinate the work, and I think bringing it here is a good start. And I think this could be really cool to have, create that social function. And I can see a lot of programming things, that, similar to pickleball, where people get together and play. You could conceivably have, hey, this, for those that want to walk with others, there's group walks, start at certain times. And this week or this month we're doing this trail or that one. So, but I appreciate the work. And I know that in the last community where I resided, that we did this in connection. I was with the health system, and we did this with the city and created walking areas and fitness parks and different things. And I think it got used a fair amount. So I think this would be good for our community.
I would concur with what you both said, and I conceptually think it's a fabulous idea. And just recently took a walking tour of Summit Avenue, and the Twin Cities have a lot of these walks set up on an app and in books, and it's really about kind of learning and or just enjoying the area. So conceptually, I think it's an awesome idea. But concur with all the things you two brought up.
Other thoughts, comments?
So if I can just say, I think so as I understand it, this is not about building new trails, but it's saying, here's a loop that's gonna be 2 miles long, here's a loop that'll be 4 miles long. If it's possible, it would be ideal to make that available digitally in an app. So as hikers, we use All Trails.
Yeah.
And that's, so if you can, once this is done, if you could figure out how to plug this into All Trails, then it's live updates on where you are, and it navigates you. And
Twin Cities has an app too that.
Twin Cities does, yeah. But I think ultimately, once you create these paths and identify how long they are and how challenging they are, to have it digitally available is going to be a key.
That's an excellent point. In fact, I put on the survey, one of the things that I think, and I know there's a map out there that for the trails now, but it's extremely difficult to
It is,
figure out, and
and it's small.
it's small, and especially for some of us that are getting a little older. So I think that would help a lot, and I like the if you can
App.
Have an app for it where you could just plug it in. It tells you to, I'm on this app, take the next turn, and I don't get lost. So I actually got lost on the bike trail going to the one that connects down to Chaska. I missed a turn I was confused because it said Carver this way, and I was going to Chaska, so I thought, well, that isn't the right way, and I ended up where I was supposed to. I figured it out eventually, but I was walking at that time just to check it out, so I got some extra exercise, so I guess all was not lost. Okay, other things? Go ahead, Alyssa.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate the trying to implement a lot of historical themes, but I'm just a little confused on, if you have any ideas on how to implement some of those themes. I just want to know what you have in mind for that.
That's a great question, committee member, and obviously we still have some opportunity to really figure out what that's going to look like. And we've had one of our Parks and Recreation temp staff this summer take a real deep dive into our historic past, going to the Historical Society of Carver County, looking at some of their plat maps and just identifying, who used to be here. And what impact did they have to our communities? So that is obviously one of the first steps. But how do we bring that out into the physical world, I think is really the question that you're asking. And I think there's a few different ways that we can do that. Obviously, we've talked about the digital realm and being able to use things like QR codes or links to get people to being able to access that information. I think the Summit Avenue example is a great one. I've taken that tour myself. If you haven't, please add it to your Minnesota things to do list because it is absolutely fantastic. And there are ways where you can do that in person as a programming activity, but also have the ability to download the State Historical Society app on your phone and walk through that process together and learn about who used to live here, grab some historic photos so you can really connect your phone to the historic past as well as what's there today. And then there's also opportunities. You mentioned signage and going in a wrong direction. I think there's plenty of opportunities through physical obvious signage that not only can you use for wayfinding, but you can also use it to explain and do some of that more museum-like programming just in a sign-like way. So people that are just passing by might not even know that exists, so they would have that opportunity to stop, pause, learn about whatever that happens to be and move along. I think there's a bunch of different avenues, and I'm excited to explore, and I think there's definitely opportunities for us to work with different organizations to really come to fruition on that.
Yeah. And if I may just add a quick suggestion, seeing how this is going to be my last time here probably, I would love to see something like a land acknowledgement somewhere, because oftentimes I've been on some trails in Eden Prairie that have some physical historical markers. And it's oftentimes just saying, hey, this farmer lived here, when we know that Minnesota has a much richer history than that. And for a lot of universities do have things like land acknowledgements, and I think that would just be something moving us in the right direction into the 21st century.
Completely agree. From one history major to another.
All right, any other comments before? Alyssa, did you have some additional?
Well, I see people already looking onto their screen, so I wanted to pull up some of an overview of the trails that they were looking at, and I do have some slides that go deep dive into each of these individually. So again, these do consider trail gaps, and they do not cross those. However, I hear what the committee is saying, and I absolutely agree. I think that's something we can take a look at is, if this trail gap wasn't here, where could this go? And I think a great example would be these red and pink ones over on the left-hand side, as they're really limited, and we can go through that through the slides, to connecting to other community areas because of some significant trail gaps. So I think highlighting that through this exercise is definitely something that we can do and explore and place into some of these pieces as well. But I just want to give, again, a brief overview and then go into each one of these just to give you a good taste of what we're looking at. So I'm going to start on the top of the screen here where my mouse is kind of hovering. This is a route that covers our north side of the city. It does utilize Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail. And it starts over by Swiss Mountain neighborhood, if you're familiar with that, up on the north side on Rolling Hills. And then if we go to the next one farthest south, it would be yellow, if you can see that, and this would start at Lions Park and tour into Noderman Woods Park. Another one of the best hidden features of Victoria. If you haven't gone to that park, please add it to your list. And then it goes through the wetland and the marshland and sneaks back down. One directly south to that is more of a straightforward path, but also great for exercise if you're really looking to maybe not go inside to the walking path in the rec center, want to go outside for a little stroll. This would be a great fitness walk. And there's two different options. There's a short one and a long one, just depending on your time availability, as well as just what you're interested in doing on a physicality level. And then going directly to our left, we have two different routes. This one that I'm hovering over, there's another piece here. This would start at Rhapsody or at Kelzer Pond Park. There's better parking, however, at Rhapsody, and you sneak your way up through some boardwalk areas, some overlook areas, into the Madeline Creek, into the Madison Park area, and then up into Kelzer Pond. And there's some different areas that you can choose to stop and then turn around, some really natural areas to turn around if you don't want to take that long hike. And then directly to the north of that, it seems a little straightforward, but another beautiful park and trail route would be starting at Lake Bridge neighborhood. There's plenty of parking, and you go straight east towards Madison Park, going through some boardwalk areas, some forest areas to make your way over there, and then straight back. Or you can connect down and go all the way to Rhapsody, depending on your interest level. And then the last on the bottom, on the south side, would be touring the Wasserman Lake area. So you'd go and start at Wasserman, where it has the most parking opportunities, tour that stretch, and then work your way through some neighborhoods, through some boardwalk and wetland area, and then go around the Victoria Elementary School area, and then sneak your way back. So that's just a high-level overview, and then I will go into each one of these in detail. And committee members, do not hesitate to interrupt or ask any questions. That's what this is all about. We're looking for your feedback, so through each one of these, do not hesitate just to state your thoughts. So the first one, and I did go out of order previously, so this is the one that starts at Lions Park and snakes through Noderman Woods, and we've just temporarily called this Route 1 or Into the Woods. So you have about 1.81 miles of parkway. There's pavement and concrete sidewalk. You don't run into gravel or any boardwalk material, which is important when we're considering accessibility for these routes. Park connections includes Lions Park, obviously, Noderman Woods, and Savannah Valley. And then community connections. So obviously this isn't part of this route specifically, but if you were to try and do this route and want to get to other places in the community, or if you lived along this trail route, you could also get to the Victoria Recreation Center by heading south. Obviously Lions Park, you could connect to downtown through Victoria Drive, as well as the light rail, Carver Park as well, and then obviously Holy Family Catholic High School and their tennis courts and gardens would be direct access to this trail route system. And then seeing on the screen, staff have walked some of these routes, so what you're seeing on some of these, not all of these, is the elevation change as you're going through some of these. So blue is the lowest point, and then red would be the highest points. So significant elevation changes in certain areas of this route specifically. The second is what we're calling along 6 Mile Creek, and this would be starting in the Lake Bridge section. So you can tour, start at Lake Bridge Park, you have adequate parking, and then you snake your way east through the 6 Mile Creek in the Lake Bridge neighborhood to make your way into Madison Park. And obviously you have connections into Kelzer Pond if that's of interest level, or you can snake down to Rhapsody. So just this section here, which is shown on the screen, from start to finish would be 2.55 miles. You can see the elevation change on this one as well. It is significant, but is at a gradual slope. And then trail material, it's a vast variety. We have pavement, concrete sidewalks, gravel, as well as just the natural ground in some areas. But some of these are also optional. So this section here that I'm pointing at would be an optional add-on, and that is all natural ground. And then park connections. I must have not copied and pasted correctly. Please ignore that. We have Lake Bridge Park would be our main Park connection, as well as Kelser Pond through a different connection, and then we've already talked Madison Park would be another one. When it comes to community connections, and as we just mentioned, this one doesn't really have opportunity for those larger community connections, and that is strictly due to trail gaps in this side of our community.
And that's actually one of our priorities was that.
It is. It is.
I have a question.
Yes.
I know you said this is part of the senior advisory committee's work plan, and it's also been presented to the city council. Was this a community request of them, like to develop these routes? Like, did they have a survey that went out that people are asking for this signage and these walking routes?
That's a great question, committee member, and it hasn't gone to city council. Sorry if I misspoke earlier, I misrepresented that. It's been strictly at the senior advisory committee level at this point. And this was a request of certain members of our senior advisory committee to include in their 2023 work plan, similar to what you all do when you create your work plan, is something that they wanted to kickstart and really try and connect key areas of our community to other key areas of our community.
Okay.
So that is where it started.
Thank you.
Yes, and on top of that, sorry to interrupt by any means, but there was also talk about walking groups. We talked about programming briefly, that being a significant interest to our community of having those walking groups, or either the city hosting that or volunteers hosting that. So this would be another opportunity for us to be able to provide that service at a volunteer or neighborhood level, or even at a program level.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Moving on to the other side of along 6 Mile Creek, the Rhapsody neighborhood. We would start at Rhapsody Park, although you could start on the north side and walk your way down. It's about 4 miles, a little less or a little over that, to go all the way up and all the way down. And then you have pavement, concrete sidewalk, gravel, some sections of natural ground and boardwalk. The natural ground is optional sections. And then park connections, we obviously have Rhapsody Park, Madison, and Kelser Pond. Any questions here?
I have a general question. I do like these different routes. My wife and I walk a lot, and especially in the winter when we're around more. Would the plan be, some of the places we walk now, some of these, and some of them are plowed, and some, I don't know if they all would be. I don't know if we're even close to that far to even consider that yet, but is that in the offing?
That's a great question, Chair, and I am sorry to even think that we have to talk about winter already. I know it's only August, but we just unfortunately do. That's a great thing that we should consider is moving forward with this, is the plowing of some of these. Obviously, we don't plow all of our trails, depending, like some of the natural ground ones. That's just not something we do, but we should definitely include that moving forward into these considerations. And I will also say, when it comes to our trails, they are one of our last priorities when it comes to plowing. We want to make sure that all of our road infrastructure, as well as our emergency vehicle access, are plowed first. So they definitely will be plowed if they need to be plowed. They just might not be the first thing to be plowed in the morning.
I can say that the ones that we do walk on, that generally they've always been plowed when we've gone out. We don't tend to go out when it's still snowing, and I know the city does a good job on the ones we do, but this is quite a bit more extensive than that we're talking about here, I think, than some of the main trails.
Absolutely. And as when we look at moving forward, when we're talking about creating some of those wayfinding materials or marketing these routes, having that indicated should also be really important, so people know that in the winter, if you're brave enough, please come out and travel on some of these areas, because you can expect them to be plowed.
Yeah, because I'm looking at this, and by concrete sidewalk, you're relying on the homeowners to, and I mean, this route especially just is along a lot of, homeowners' sidewalks in front of their house, so you'd just be relying on you know, people to keep up on that.
Very true.
Okay.
All right, so the next one is views of Wasserman. So that's that south area that we were looking at. So it starts at the Wasserman Lake Preserve. It's about 3 miles, a little over than that, to loop all the way around. And you'll run into pavement, sidewalk, gravel, as well as boardwalk. So you do have a variety of different materials with this route, but it does connect you to Wasserman Park as well as Lake Town and some community connections. Our Victoria Elementary School, again, we should highlight as we look at some of these routes, the trail connections, the trail gaps that have been identified that if completed would help this route specifically in this neighborhood make its way up to some of the more fun amenities that our community offers.
I walk this road all the time, so it's a great route.
It is.
Yeah.
And then the overlook at Tamarack, that's actually the park name that goes through here. But you start at this specific route, Swiss Mountain Park. It is quite a bit smaller than the rest of them, but it does connect to the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail System. So if you do want a bit more of a challenge, you can make your way there, as well as the Arboretum. So I do want to plug that, but it is 1.41 miles, again, the smallest of the ones we've identified, and it has a mix of pavement, concrete, as well as gravel, depending on certain areas. And its connections, in addition to Swiss Mountain, is the overlook at Tamarack Park.
Is there a parking space here?
There's not specific parking dedicated here. This would be street parking. That is a good point, committee member. Thank you for mentioning that. Because yes, that is the other challenge when it comes to this specific area. But since there is a park there, there are some street parking availabilities.
I wonder if some of the, the church there wouldn't be open to, if they were contacted, if during the week they would allow parking at Mount Olivet.
Yeah, that is something we've not explored before, but something, if this moves forward, we could definitely take a look at and working.
Except that it's dangerous to cross.
That's true too.
Versus down where the trail is, there's the light to cross the trail down there. So,
Yeah,
Further down here.
but up at the church, it would be,
that's true.
it could be dangerous.
That is a great point.
Yeah, I think the other day, driving past there was a car parked on the side there. And, at first it was like, I mean, just, off the road. I mean, there's a little shoulder there. And I thought, I don't know if they'd broken down or what, but probably they went walking along the trail. And
I see cars parked there all the time. That's my route to work, and I see there's room for like 2 or 3 cars right off the trail there, and so I don't know if that's what they're doing, but they're walking or biking or whatever.
I wonder if there's any possibility of creating some parking spaces there. I don't know what might be available.
Since that's a county road, I don't think we have specific
yeah,
jurisdiction
that's
of
right. I
that
thought that's a
space.
county road.
And I do believe through the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan, they've already dictated what's going to move forward with this road. And I don't believe that there's parking included in that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But all good points, all great points.
Mm.
And then one of our last ones is what for now we've called the fitness course, and maybe an opportunity there is, you've seen this in other communities possibly, but ability to provide maybe some fitness equipment along this route as people want to do a little bit more if they're visiting the D-Town Park or the recreation center. So this is a short and a long route. The short route, if you start from the Victoria Recreation Center, you follow this larger stretch. And then of course, if you want to extend it, you can just continue on and head your way down to this section here. And you could probably even extend it further because you can go all the way to County Road 11 and make your way up to downtown area as well as the light rail. So for the short section, it would be about 2 miles. If you wanted to extend it, it would be about 3. This route is specifically pavement and concrete sidewalk. And in addition to the Recreation Center and D-Town Park, you could also snake into Allegheny Park, which is just this little section right here. There is no parking there. It's kind of just a little hidden park area. So people could connect to that. And then when we talk about those larger community connections, Lions Park, Carver Park, the Lake Minnetonka Regional Trail. My apologies if I called it light rail before, because I just realized I've said that. Holy Family Catholic High School. And then if you wanted to snake up, you could go into that Noterman Woods area up there. And with that, committee members, that ends this review of each of these different trail routes.
Any further comments for Alyssa?
I really appreciate that additional equipment interest along this trail. Is there any interest in putting them along any of the other trails mentioned before?
There could absolutely be that further conversation, and something that the Senior Advisory Committee voiced during their past discussions is really looking at those key themes. And they talked about, how do we connect people to more lakes, and how do we connect people to parks, and could we do specifically a fitness route to make it that destination? So that was kind of the thought process on really keeping this one fitness focused, but that doesn't have to stay that way since we're so early in the programming stages of this.
I would suggest that, in the coordination of this, I think this is fine, the programming and that. I think when it comes to benches and wayfinding, when we start getting in the capital costs, I think that would be important to get that on our list of what our other park priorities are, because it may well be one of the top things. I don't know until we would discuss it, but I wouldn't want to preempt another item on our list if that happens to be something that the community would rank higher as a whole. At the same time, I would want to boost this, get it higher on the list if it gravitates to the top. We just don't know until we do it. So what I'm trying to say is I don't want to get into a situation where we got two different committees coming up with two different recommendations to the city council. I think that could create hard feelings and confusion with the community. So I think it would be important, however we do it, however staff feels would be best. And I think this is a good exchange, but maybe if we keep one thing programming and the other one ranking, and then, let's say the programming's there and we're getting our input now, we'll probably get input later as it moves along. So we're communicating back and forth. And I guess if there's some capital items in there like signage, benches, etc., that's been our purview in the past, and we certainly want input from the Senior Advisory Committee to help us, with that. But I think if we can keep those things separate, but connect it through input, we'll avoid a potential problem down the road. Other thoughts, comments?
No, I would agree with that, because our priority ranking is, even being new, that priority ranking is so long. At the last meeting, we decided not to add anything to that just because of the funding restraints, restrictions. So I agree with what you said, that it would be hard to see other things fall off if it didn't truly land in the right ranking.
Yeah. And at the same time, we have, pickleball courts is a prime example. Until 2 years ago, that wasn't even on our list. And that, went from 0 to 100 to the top pretty much. And that ended up being, not without a lot of discussion and saying, what does the community want and what do we need to delay to make that happen? And so we're responsive that way, but at the same time, it needs a thoughtful discussion. And again, I think what we want to avoid is if it isn't coordinated, a potential is the Senior Advisory Committee who's just working on this comes and say, hey, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it very well may be. And that takes funding away, because I'm guessing the funding for this is going to come out of the park and recreation budget for the capital piece, perhaps. And so I think just so we coordinate that. Again, I really appreciate the work of staff and the advisory committee. I think there's wonderful suggestions, but I think we need to make sure we coordinate things. So.
Agreed.
Okay, other thoughts before we call it a meeting? Okay, I don't think we need any formal action on this. If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made and second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
I
We're adjourned.